Hey, Fed heads, welcome back to Cigar Chat. This is a Cigar Chat RoundTable kind of news of the week edition. Me and Jason are going to talk about some of the happenings over the week. And of course, as always, we're broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, live on Facebook, and of course, available as a podcast or on the old YouTubes. So grab a cigar, have a seat, grab a drink. We'll be right back to talk about that. So I'm just gonna. Hey guys, so Tripp and Jason here. Jason, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. It's finally officially springtime. I'm outside in a t-shirt for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it basically feels like summer here this week. I mean, it's going back to the 50s tomorrow, so it's gonna be chilly and rainy again for a week. But it feels like we're finally past that. So for people who aren't familiar with the Pacific Northwest, where we happen to live, spring is weird because you end up with like a week that it's really nice, and then a week that it's just garbage, rainy, and cold. And we just had a really nice week. Like I'm sweating, and it was about 85 today.
Yeah.
Or so. And then tomorrow it's gonna be back to 55 for almost a week, but then it's going back to the 70s. So I think we're finally going to get into steady 70s soon, which is good. What's up, Gerard? He just says, well, "What's up, brothers?" So we've got some topics that we're going to talk about for the news of the week. Jason's got the agenda. Jason, what are we talking about first?
Well, so I figure we will open up with let's talk a little bit about what's been going on down in Nicaragua. There was a situation down there where there was quite a bit of protest going on over what I understand it to be is that the government changed things related to the Nicaraguan version of Social Security.
So basically, the basic explanation of that is it's not a huge difference, but it is over the course of your life. So it's kind of like it works the way Social Security does here. You pay out every paycheck into the government, and then they give you back that money later. I'm not sure whether they take some of that money or whether you get back more than you put in or what in Nicaragua. But basically, they increased the amount that you have to put in on an annual basis by 2.5% or 2.9%. And then they decreased the amount that you end up getting back later by almost 5%. So basically, even though you're putting more money in, you're getting even less back than you would have in the first place. And over the course of a lifetime, that makes a big difference. So there were college students that were protesting that. That's kind of where the protesting started. And it wasn't driven purely by the changes to Social Security. It was, there were some other changes that the government has made recently that I'm not familiar with all the details of. But it wasn't just because of the changes to Social Security. That was kind of what sparked what's going on.
Yeah, so it sounds like it started out as very normal, peaceful protests, and then, like often happens everywhere in the world, is you get sort of an element that sees that going on and then shows up and causes problems.
So the reports that I've heard about that is that Sandinistas, which, if you're not familiar with the political climate in Nicaragua, they basically side with the government. They're mostly responsible for the regime change that happened in the 90s, and they're typically known as a fairly violent group. A group of Sandinistas went to some of the protesters and attacked them while they were kind of having, it was kind of the standard protest thing where they had police around and stuff, and the police basically didn't do anything. And that's what started, like, violence from the protesters' side.
Yeah, and then it sounds like for a few days the situation kind of devolved, but then within the last day or so, it sounds like things have sort of kind of stopped and like returned to normal, and there's been kind of a sense of unity to where people are maybe still protesting a little bit, but it's not
It's
as big
returned
of
to
a
peaceful
situation.
protests.
Yeah.
And now I've seen a lot of videos and a lot of pictures of like there was a walk for peace on Sunday, I think, because a few protesters were killed by police during the rioting. And man, it's just a sad situation to see.
It is. It's one of those things where you live in America and suddenly you realize some of the privileges that we have here of the ability to go protest something, and
Hmm.
the police, as long as you're not breaking the law, will generally ensure your safety and work to keep things sane. And even when people get pretty out of control here, I mean, the police even resort to like non-lethal force as a very last resort. So
Yeah, and I believe, as far as I've heard, most of the police in Nicaragua are using non-lethal means. Like Skip Martin uh, was very good about posting what was going on in Esteli for people who were following along. Um, and I know that there were like rubber bullets and tear gas and stuff like that.
yeah, but it's good to hear that that situation seems to be kind of resolving itself now and life is returning to normal.
Yeah, the president has officially announced that he's open to talks, and I believe they've started the talks about what kind of reforms they can make to, you know, for the better. Um, and I just hope all that goes well, and everybody in Nicaragua stays safe, and um, you know that the government does right by the people.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought it was impressive to see a lot of the smaller cigar factories were kind of posting on social media during the height of this that all of their employees still came to work and did a normal day, and at least
Yeah,
within that environment things were very normal. So
yeah. It seems like from what I've heard, things are mostly back to normal for people of Esteli at least. I don't know anybody in Managua, so I'm not 100% sure what the situation is there. But from what I've heard, things are going fairly well, and things are kind of back to normal for everyday people.
yeah, which is good. I hope that they continue to have normal stuff and just kind of get back to everyday life, and hopefully the government listens to the people and they're able to come to something that works for everybody.
Yeah, it would be hard for me. I mean, not only would it really impact cigar uh, the cigar ethos, like the entire economy of cigars, if there was like, I don't know, another war or something like that, like if things went way too far.
Yeah,
But it would just make me sad because I love Nicaragua. I've been there a few times, and um, hopefully I'll be back again soon. But it would just make me sad to see that go on in a country that I care about.
yeah, definitely.
What's
And I
up,
know
Evan? Evan's watching. Thanks for
when
watching,
I
brother.
when I hear stuff like that, sometimes your first reaction is like, oh, maybe now if you had a trip to Nicaragua planned, you might think twice about it. But I find that most of the time, unless things are really going off the rails, like you're fine to travel.
I think unless you went there like late last week or early this week or over the weekend, um, unless you were like flying in this past Friday, I don't see any reason to avoid Nicaragua.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the U.S. Department of State it's back to normal status now. They
I
they
think so.
were evacuating some like family members of embassy staff and stuff, but sounds like everything's just returned to normal now.
Yeah. All right. What else we got to talk about?
All right, so something kind of interesting. Lots of us are fans of Casa Fernandez cigars,
Oh
and
yeah.
Casa Fernandez has officially changed its name to Aganorsa Leaf.
I think this is a really good move by them because um, you can't say, I can't say everyone, definitely not everybody knows the name Aganorsa. Most hardcore cigar smokers are familiar with Aganorsa. They know that when you're smoking something from Illusion, when you're smoking a lot of Nick's cigars, which actually I'm about done with my Bishop's blend here, so my next cigar is one of Nick's, that they use a lot of Aganorsa tobacco. And that's kind of Aganorsa tobacco for people who aren't familiar, because I feel like this piece of history has been kind of swept under the rug by a lot of people, but Don Pepin used to be basically the factory that Aganorsa used for all of their tobacco. And that's kind of where Don Pepin came from. And then my father started, and they kind of cut ties. And a lot of people who are familiar with Aganorsa aren't necessarily familiar with the Casa Fernandez brand, because there's always been kind of a disconnect there, where you don't necessarily realize that if you buy something that's made by Casa Fernandez, that it's all Aganorsa tobacco, except maybe the wrapper. And now they're going to have that prominently on their boxes and stuff. They're not going to change most of their brand names, but now it's not going to be Casa Fernandez cigars by Casa Fernandez. It's going to be Casa Fernandez cigars from Aganorsa leaf.
Yeah, and I think it'll just make more sense to consumers, because you have Aganorsa leaf as like a parent company. Casa Fernandez is a type of cigars. JFR
Yeah,
is
it's a brand of cigars under their umbrella.
A little bit easier to track.
Yeah, I think it's just going to make it easier for everybody, and I think there'll be less confusion in the market about what Aganorsa and Casa Fernandez mean to each other.
Yeah, and it's a good tie-in because the Aganorsa leaf, they partner with people like Warp to make like the Guardian of the Farm and stuff. And
oh yeah, I didn't even mention Warp. Most Warps are all Aganorsa tobacco too.
Yeah,
Aganorsa. I've heard from some people that they aren't a fan of it, but for me, it's just got a little bit of magic in there. I don't know what it is, but something about it is just special compared to everything else.
I think it's great, especially one of the things that I'll hear from a lot of people is that they don't like Nicaraguan cigars because of the strength, and they don't like that dirty, earthy thing. So my first recommendation is try something with Aganorsa, because you can get a medium Aganorsa cigar that has tons of flavor and hits you with that kind of citrus and honey sweetness, and it really works well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's absolutely a great move for them, and I think it's gonna. I'm excited to see their booth this year with a bunch of Aganorsa signs. I think it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that their new logo is cool looking, and their new website's awesome. I was looking at that the other day.
All right, what do we got next? Before we'll talk about the topic before we get into our break, and then we'll take our quick break here.
All right, so I think next we're gonna go over some new releases that were announced.
All right. So we're going to talk about the new releases in a minute, but I'm going to take the break a little early so that we don't have to do it in the middle of talking about that. This segment is brought to you by the Cigar Federation store. They release a couple of Cigar Federation Tobaccos releases a couple of exclusives every week. Keep an eye out for those. If you sign up for the email list, you can get information from CigarFederationTobaccos.com. Cigar Federation is, if you're not familiar with the store, they kind of focus on smaller brands, on boutique cigars, and they get a lot of the brand new stuff. Like I just ordered I'm smoking my very last 2017 Bishop blend here, and Bishop's blend from Black Label Trading Company. And I just on Friday I pre-ordered my box of 2018, so I'm looking forward to those. They should have those. I think they're supposed to land like early next week or something, and then they'll be shipping out from there.
Yeah, it sounds like they spent some time in customs for whatever reason.
Yeah, that happens these days. All right, so what other new releases do we have to talk about?
All right, so it's not really a new release, but it has officially been announced that the Neanderthal HOXD is becoming the next regular production Neanderthal.
Oh, nice. I have a box of those that I just got, but before they were, it was kind of like, I like that Romacraft is kind of moving in the direction of more regular releases, because for a long time they've had some sporadic releases.
Yeah.
And they're still going to keep them sporadic, but they're actually officially regular production now. Like with the Black Irish is the one that's hot right now because they just released more of them. But initially there was basically one run, and then if you could find one, you were real lucky. But now it's going to be one of those things that comes out every few months, like maybe once or twice a year. You're going to see those popping up on shelves, which is good.
Yeah, it's cool. And it seems like, because I think that size originally came out as part of a sampler pack.
Yeah, the Petit Coronas sampler pack
Yeah.
that had all 5 of the blends in Petit Coronas. Man, I love that cigar.
It's good.
I almost
It's a
actually
strong-
smoked that for the show tonight, but I figured it wasn't long enough.
Yeah. Another cigar that is coming back is Camacho is bringing back the I probably gonna admit the Coyolar.
I think you're saying that right. Unless
Yeah.
I've always been saying it wrong, you're saying it right.
So it's gonna come back in with kind of the new Camacho packaging. I remember smoking that a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time since those were available, as far as I can remember. I probably haven't smoked one since 2010 or so. I don't know
Yeah.
when they were originally around. I don't know what their lifespan was.
Let's see, and then it looks like 1502 Cigars is releasing a line that is only going to be sold at the Casa de Monte Cristo and Sirius Cigar locations.
Yeah, I think I actually read that's an exclusive on the Sirius Cigars website,
Okay.
which is interesting. But it's not going to be in any retail locations. And speaking of 1502, we're actually going to have Enrique on the show next week. For anybody who tried to watch that day a couple weeks ago, he was supposed to be on the show, but we had some technical problems and decided to call it off since I was on the road and without my normal production gear. Is that it for the new releases?
That is, yeah. There's right now it's kind of the period of time where they're starting to randomly announce the TAA stuff.
Yeah.
And that's something I'll just say as a consumer who's in the cigars, I really wish that they would just at some point put out one press release and say, here are all the TAA cigars.
I commented, so Will Cooper, Cigar Coop, posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago that he basically the same thing, that it's weird how there's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes they announce all within a week. Sometimes one of the brands will just announce theirs and everybody else is like, well, I guess I got to announce mine now. And my comment on that was that they need to put out one press release, preferably during the TAA week when they're in Mexico at their meeting, and just announce everything all at once, because it makes it confusing. And I personally end up missing releases. Like I remember a couple years ago, Asylum had the Asylum 13 Nocturne, was it called? The Mexican San Andreas one.
Oh, yeah. That was really good.
It was a really good cigar. I had no idea it came out until it hit shelves. Until people started saying that's a really good cigar. That Asylum TAA is great. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize they made one. Because it comes out in a series of press releases at different times. And it's easy to miss what is coming out unless somebody from the media like us compiles into one article about it.
Yeah. And then in other, just kind of like two releases that there's not a ton of information about, but Room 101 and Lost and Found are collaborating on a cigar that's coming out called the Super Stroke.
I'm interested to see that. The thought of a collaboration for a Lost and Found release is very strange to me.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand why there were what the collaboration would even be. Like did he pick the cigars? I wish that they would have released some of that in the press release about it. Because I don't understand what Matt's involvement with that is. It could be the packaging. Maybe he designed the packaging, but
Yeah.
I don't understand how a collaboration for something like that works, where you're not blending anything, you're just finding cigars in a factory and releasing them. Um, Perhaps he found them, and he's the one that went to Caldwell and said we need to release these. But I wish that we had a story behind it.
Yeah, the guy on the packaging, it's kind of an ode to Popeye a little bit, and it looks a bit like Matt Booth in the face.
Everybody looks a bit like Matt Booth.
And then the other one that kind of blew up the internet for a day there was Romacraft is coming out with these cigars they're calling Weaselitos.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to
they're
those
little cigars. It sounds cool, and it sounds like they're going to do it for pretty much all of the lines. The only big question there is because of the FDA, I don't know if they'll be able to release those in the U.S.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like Skip went and made the announcement about it and stuff, but I don't know if they're going to be allowed to release those in the U.S. or it's going to be another one that he ships to Germany and everybody has to buy them from Germany. Mm-hmm. Gerard Shelley says he's been hearing a lot about 1502 and wants to know if they're a decent brand. I really like them.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to learn more about them, and we'll be talking to Enrique. We'll be smoking some 1502 cigars. I think they do some really interesting things. Their first couple lines, the emerald, the ruby, and the black, I think it's called. It might be called onyx or something. I think it's just called black. I don't know the blends off the top of my head, but I know you've got kind of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner cigar. So you've got kind of a milder cigar. You've got one with a little bit of bite, and then you've got like the real dark San Andreas cigar. And then more recently, his releases have been focused on the XO series, which is extra old. And all of those have used like really old tobaccos. I think one of the leaves is 18 years old, and I think the wrapper is like 12 years old. There's some really well-aged tobaccos in that cigar, and I think it's a very good cigar for what it is, though it is, $20.
Yeah, it's good. I recommend if you see like a sampler or something of the 1502 stuff, pick it up. None of them are bad. And I think you'll definitely find two or three that you gravitate towards. I really like the Ruby. That's just a great cigar any time of the day.
I'm checking right now. I think our sponsor, the Cigar Federation store, I know they've got a bunch of 1502 samplers there. And yeah, so they mark them down for the show. They are $29.95 for a 5-pack, and you get a 1502 Nicaragua, a emerald, a ruby, a black, and the sapphire, which is the blue. I think that sapphire, that one's my favorite.
Yeah, that one's good.
So yeah, if you haven't had them, check them out. The store is still running that deal because of the show that fell through. But if you're interested in trying them, I mean, $30 is nothing for 5 cigars. That's a pretty smoking deal on those. All right, what else we got, Jason?
All right, so there's not a ton more going on in the news. It seems like there's a lot of people movement in the cigar industry, but there's always a lot of people movement in the cigar industry. It's like
So the most recent one that just was announced this morning is General Cigar's got a new VP of marketing. For me, I mean, personally speaking, for me, General Cigar is my favorite of the big companies. I think of like the massive conglomerate companies. Them and Drew Estate are the ones that put out the best cigars. And the thing with General is that they put out cigars over a ridiculously wide range of prices and palettes, like completely different flavor profiles all over the place. I'm excited to see what he does because Victoria, who's the director of PR at General Cigar, and she's kind of the person that we interact with as media. She speaks very highly of him, so I'm excited to meet him at the IPCPR this year.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that of the major companies, one of the things that I like about General Cigars is they tend to let their brand managers run with the brand a little bit. and you get some really interesting blends that come out of that. It's like they're still making stuff that they have to crank out by the hundreds of thousands, but then they'll also make smaller runs of stuff. They'll partner with people like AJ Fernandez to make some interesting stuff. So
they're that's the thing I really like about General, is that they're all over the place. They don't focus on any one thing, but they don't do anything badly. They have the right people in the right places.
Mm-hmm. When you're a giant company like that and have such great infrastructure, why not? And then it looks like Gurkha signed with Kraytech International for Canada distribution.
Kraytech. If you're not familiar with Kraytech, they own the Ventura brand.
Okay.
And that's, so this is a thing that I was confused by. Like, a lot of people have been historically confused by Cas Fernandez and AJ Fernandez. Ventura Cigar is not the same as William Ventura, who is the factory that makes all the Caldwell cigars and stuff. Ventura makes what do they make? We were just talking about it today.
They make they make a ton of cigars that's a number/a number.
Yeah, they do that series. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. They do the what was the one that Surgeon smoked today? The Axis Mundi.
Yes.
They make whatever that line is called. I'm like blanking on it right now.
The Archetype.
Archetype, yes. Archetype is one of their big brands. And then they're another company that's got kind of wide range of price levels. But I'm interested to see how this thing with them distributing Gurkha is, because this is a little bit of a hot take, but a lot of people hate on Gurkha, and that's because a lot of what Gurkha sells is sold through catalogs. And it makes me curious whether they're going to be exporting or whether Canada's going to be importing a lot of that catalog stuff, and Kraytech's going to be selling that, or whether they're going to be only importing the B&M exclusive stuff, which is, for me, that's where Gurkha's at. If you're going to be smoking a Gurkha, smoke the B&M exclusive stuff. I'm interested to see which way they go with that.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays on the Canadian market, because, I mean, pricing is such a challenge in Canada with the taxes.
Yeah, that's true.
That it seems like companies that go in there have to have a strategy for how to come in at a cost that doesn't end up at $60 a cigar after taxes.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to be importing any Maharajas or His Majesty's Reserve, because those will be like between 5 and 10,000 per cigar, with Canadian taxes, and that I just don't see people in Canada buying that for some reason.
No,
but at the same time, you sell one cigar, and that might pay your store's rent for the month.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was most of the news stories that I kind of found that seemed like they were interesting to talk about a little bit. I was thinking that maybe we could spend a few minutes talking about, since it is springtime and we're going into summer, just kind of like spring and summertime cigars, sort of coming out of that winter hibernation mode, and what cigars are you reaching for in the summertime that you were kind of sitting on through the winter?
Ooh. For me, like, I end up, like, if I go into a store and they have, like, just a brand off the top of my head, Liga Privada. If they have Liga Privada and they only have the Corona Doble, I might buy one. But I end up, like, accruing a bunch of Churchills and Corona Dobles and stuff like that, because it's hard to smoke that kind of stuff when it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I'm going to be out, even if I am going to go outside for a couple hours and smoke in the cold, for some reason I always end up smoking like 2 Petit Coronas or something like that, or 2 Coronas or Robustos, because I just don't reach for those big cigars in the wintertime. So for me, it's like anything that I have that's like bigger than a Toro, or even a lot of Toros, I just don't reach for them in the winter. I'm trying to think of some specific cigars that I've been I've been looking forward to smoking.
I always like to break out Illusion, like the ECCJ and the Singulares in the summertime. That's a good, just take it slow, enjoy the weather, smoke that thing.
Yeah, one of my favorites in the summertime. It's not going to be a surprise to anybody who's watched the show before. The Sober Mesa Short Churchill is such a good morning cigar. Like, you start your morning with a bang, and it's really good with coffee because it's got an intensity, but it's also got a pretty clean finish, and it's not going to like ruin your palate for the rest of the day. A lot of cigars, if you smoke them first thing in the morning, you're going to blow out your palate, and you're not going to taste anything for the rest of the day.
I'd say that the going into the spring and summer, kind of like the morning time cigar is something that returns to my rotation, because during the winter time, I just don't get it in. I don't want to go out and, freeze my ass off trying to, smoke a cigar when it's still only, like 40 degrees out when you first get up in the morning. So,
yeah, it's different in other places, but here it's cooler in the morning by a lot. Like, a lot of times you'll wake up and it's 50 degrees, and as the sun comes up, it works its way up to 95. And that's why I really like morning cigars in the summer, because you get to get a cigar in before you start sweating.
Yeah, so I have a big pile of cigars that I've kind of collected over the winter, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is something I want to have in the morning. So I kind of put it there, and then now that the weather's getting nice, when I actually get up and can go sit out on the deck and enjoy some coffee and a cigar, I can actually work my way through that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also find that when the weather gets warmer, milder cigars become more appealing to me.
I was going to say, I feel like when it's warmer out, my palate is better. I think it has to do with the humidity in the air and like drying out my palate and stuff when it's cold and low humidity. But when it's warm out, I feel like my palate just is more in tune. Yeah. Except right now, because right now my allergies are going nuts.
That's the trade-off.
Yeah.
You get the weather, but then you have to deal with the allergies.
All right, we got anything else, or are we about ready to wrap it up?
I think that's about it. Kind of a short one this week, but...
Yeah, I meant to mention that at the beginning of the show, but I forgot. That, this was just a show to fill in the blank space this week. We just wanted to get here, talk to you guys a little bit, and tell you what's going on in the world of cigars. But we'll wrap it up now. I do want to thank our final sponsor of the evening, Drew Estate. They good. Let's talk about a Drew Estate cigar before we...
I'm actually smoking a Herrera Esteli right now.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Man, I am in love with that blend.
Really good.
I just think that
is another one that I smoke way more of these in the summertime than the winter.
Yeah, for some reason that's a good cigar for like a hot day. I can't explain why. Just my palate likes it on a hot day. All right, but we'll wrap it up here. Thank you everybody for watching. We're probably not going to put this one on the Armed Forces Radio Network, so I'll skip that outro. But thank you to all of our live listeners. Thank you to all of our podcast listeners. And, of course, everybody watching on the old YouTubes. Go ahead and drop us a comment. Give us a thumbs up. Rate us on iTunes or whatever podcast catcher you use. We appreciate it, and we'll be back next week. We're going to have a new episode of Sharing Our Pairings. And then on Thursday, we're going to have Enrique from 1502 Cigars. So we'll see you guys next week.